Hey everyone, Pat Mesiti here, and I'm hearing a lot of lip nonsense going on from our government and from obviously the Treasurer. But what I'm not seeing is help for the average Australian. Now I'm going to go fast and go hard on this rant today because I am sick and tired, and I'm sure you all are, of the lies that the Albanese government, along with a guy that couldn't run a tuck shop in our Treasurer in profitability. They've just announced that 10 million Australians, listen to this, 10 million Australians, there's only 20 odd million of us around, will be hit with the largest tax cuts in history. This is from a government that promised you it wouldn't do it. Actually, Pat, you're wrong. You're wrong. I have to admit I'm wrong. When Albanese was asked about taxes and raising taxes, he did the very same thing that this Judas Iscariot is doing with the so-called, you know what I'm talking about? The to Parliament. And old mate John Farnham used to sing, "You're the voice, try and understand it, make it loud and make it clear. We're all sons and daughters. We're all sons and daughters." Not now, we're not. You got them and you got them. And all of this is because we have government officials that want to give you no detail. Remember I did a rant a little while ago called "The Devil is in the Detail." Well, the devil is in the exclusion of the detail. And so far, apart from this costing us millions of dollars, because if I start mentioning what it is, I'm going to get cut off, and you all know what I mean. Something that comes out of your vocal cords. When they have to start enlisting sports stars, and we all know, look, Qantas is anything that's into anything that's woke anyway, sports stars and celebrities to promote an agenda, it kind of reminds me of an agenda that they had a couple of years ago, if you remember. Remember the agenda that if you didn't do this, you could lose your job, you could be locked up, you could be fined. Now all of those fines have been thrown out of courts. People ended up fighting with their loved ones, and this is a very same demon. This is a very same spirit. And with all that distraction, sliding in the highest tax hikes in Australia's history, let alone that they're going after your super. Let me just say this to you. If you earn between $48,000 and $96,000, you're going to get $1,500 less and belted $1,500 against you in tax. If you own $126,000, watch this, you're going to get belted also. At $100,000, you're going to have $1,200 belted against you, and that's the only way I could call it, in tax hikes. And at the same time, and people start to me, "Oh, Pat, you shouldn't be upset by these things." I'm concerned you're not upset. If you want to go talking to me about social justice, and I have something to say about that, and justice, is this justice? Is this justice? What you're doing to people's hard-earned money. I'm asking you out there, is this justice? You already got inflation through the roof. People now in Australia are lining up like never before for food relief, which of course they're going to control that. I'm going up to Boona next week, and by the way, if you're in the area there, myself and a very special guest, Jane Denham, is going to come. Famous country and western star Jane Denham is going to be with us in Boona. singing and sharing her story. Australians are lining up like never before for food relief because of a government that is out of control, that is selling us for 30 pieces of silver. That's why there's a Judas in our midst. Tax hikes, won't give us details about their, and then they've got to get all the sports stars and all the celebrities on board, because if you say no, you're a racist. Matter of fact, if you say no to any of these agendas, you become an enemy. You become a bigot. You're not allowed an opinion. You're not allowed any moral compass. You must do as you are told. Now let me just say, we've already got voices in Parliament. And I want to just say this. I don't need a welcome to country for a country that I already belong in. I'm over it. I'm over it. You talk about unity and talk about Australia be our one, for we are one and free. Rubbish. We're divided and enslaved. Maybe someone ought to rewrite Advance Australia Fair. We're not one and free. Are you kidding me? Already the divide is there. Already the divide is there. Among our Indigenous people, among political leaders, among political parties, divided among themselves. I mean, for goodness sake, when you got the Greens fighting each other, all of this because we have a Prime Minister who wants to have his name up in lights and say that he did this. Well, let me ask you a question. How good a job did Kevin Rudd do? We're still here. Then, of course, we get our social justice activists crying for social justice. I want to remind you about something in the Bible. There's a guy called Judas Iscariot. And one day, a woman who Jesus had delivered and cast 7 devils out of her, broke an alabaster box, which is her dowry, which was worth a fortune. She broke it at the feet of Jesus, preparing him for his burial. And one of the only things Judas ever said was this: what a waste. Why wasn't this sold and given to the poor? The only time he ever rose his voice was in the area of social justice. I want you to hear that loud and clear. Because for those of you that are people of faith, you can't go crying justice and forgiveness and redemption at the same time. That cannot coexist. And what the Labor Party and other little fractional groups are doing is the very same thing. When we said sorry, it wasn't enough. There's always a gateway to these things. Listen to me very carefully. There's always a gateway. Same-sex marriage bill. I don't care if you want to marry someone of the same sex. Knock yourself out. But don't force me to have to comply, legitimize, and then be treated like a second-class citizen because I don't agree with you. You've got a free will. And don't tell me this is not love, this is hate speech. I'm saying this out of love. God loves people. Period. So do I. But I'll tell you what God doesn't handle. Control. Doesn't handle it at all. We're facing the largest tax hikes in history, inflation through the roof, cost of living going through the roof, a government and a national leader who wants to make a name for himself. Watch this. All the while China speeds up their coal plant construction, the Labor Party closes ours. Why? Probably because they'd like us to be dependent on China. Think about it, folks. This is the great reset and the great levelling happening right before your very eyes. And people like me, and some of my special guests that I'm having in the next weeks, will expose this nonsense. Now, next Wednesday, we have a very special VIP guest. He worked for various presidents, and he knows politicians like the back of his hand. This guy knows what they're made of and what they're like. I've invited the writer of Trends Journal, Gerald Celente, to be with us next Wednesday morning and Wednesday night. Now, you need to register for this Zoom. We only have a certain capacity. I believe about 40% of that is already gone. If you want to get out of this economic mess, if you want to avoid all this nonsense, then you better join us next Wednesday. Gerald will blow the lid off some of this nonsense. He'll tell you what's really going on over there, where they're dropping bombs and why. His famous catch cry is, when all else fails, send them to war. You're going to find out what's really been happening over in the United States. You don't want to miss this. Folks, I'm telling you, we're in for a rough ride, and the Albanese government is doing everything they can to not tell you what you should know. Now, I'm not telling you how to vote on any matter, but I will tell you, I smell a rat, and I believe many of you do too. This has got nothing to do with broken Indigenous people. I've been there. I went there. Some people say what they need is more water, more education, more all this, more running water. You can do that without running a referendum. And billions have been spent. And where is it? It goes the way it always does, to the elites. Anyway, just thought I'd give you a bit of an update of what's going on in our lives. And when someone like Marshall Langdon says to me, you won't get another welcome to country, I don't need to be re-welcomed into my country. This is my country. And if you want to start writing people into constitutional law, why don't you start with the immigrants that helped build this place? Why don't you start with them as well? Or are we just the Italians, the Greeks, Lebanese, and everybody else that were just the plantation farmers? Have a good look around you, folks, and see what's really going on. Wake up, people. Thanks for listening in. Hey, listen, tune in next Wednesday. You've got to register for it with world famous trends predictor Gerald Celente. God bless you, and thanks for joining us today.